and welcome again to another episode of Spoiler Country. Today on the show, we have writer, artist. He does a lot of stuff. He's written for Space Ghost Coast to Coast. He has done Beasts of Burden. He's done Milk and Cheese, which is where I discovered him for the first time as a young dork reading Wizard magazine, and it was amazing. So everybody, Evan Dorkin. Evan, how you doing, man?
I'm done, apparently, according to you. I've done this. I'm done.
Oh, no, not done. Not done.
Yeah, I think I am done. I think I am done, actually. At least for the next year or so, yeah.
So
I'm living a dream, you know.
Hey, man, that's awesome.
I got a haircut today, so I can't be too upset.
Looks good. I need to get mine done. It's pushing.
They cut quite I had it down to my shoulders for the first time in a long time.
Wow.
And I think my last haircut was April of last year, so that's better.
After a while, like, it's the process of going like, I could grow this out again.
I was hoping I could sell my hair to, supplement my income, but they didn't want it because there was so much gray in it. They were like, no thanks, old man. Thought there was a nest in there. Cat, what are you doing? Okay, sorry.
So it's funny. I'm working on a comic with a guy in England right now, and I told him that I was going to be talking to you later today, and I didn't really know that Milk and Cheese had gotten over to England because
it was because it was in Deadline magazine back in the day.
That's what he told me.
Yeah, well, that's what I was right then. 10 points for me. Yeah, I was the token American in Deadline. I did Milk and Cheese's, I don't know, 93, 92. I can't remember dates, but yeah, I was doing it often, sort of monthly for a while, but then intermittently, and then they were reprinting older strips. But I did some Pirate Corps stuff for them and from Sacco, and they ran some fun strips. But yeah, my stuff was in Deadline, is where I went over there for 4 conventions, did a tour with did a Deadline signing tour. That was great times. I missed that. That was awesome.
It's wild. So yeah, he told me that of course he knew who you were because you were in a magazine that had Tank Girl and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was pretty much what it was, the Tank Girl magazine guy.
And
I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to get this thing so that I'm looking a little bit better. Maybe that works. Okay, hi.
It's all good, man. So yeah. He said after drawing Bolland and Dylan, I used to then copy Hewlett and Dorkin. And that's he would go to art school with your stuff.
That's good company to be in. I'm probably the easiest to copy out of that bunch. Bolland, Jesus.
So like cartoon being fluid with your character, so that is a skill. That is a real skill. And that's something that you excel at. And Milk and Cheese was a really, really good example of that. To where
they're 2 boxes with faces on them. It's not. It's it's not like I'm doing serious character design there. I mean, they just are. Oh, cat, that's my dinner. Oh well. Yeah, I mean, they are what they are. They're just 2 goofy cartoon characters that connected with enough people to keep me drawing them. They were just little gag characters I was drawing on envelopes for people and things like that. I mean, I was drunk when I came up with them after a show. I went to see some bands at CB's, and we went to a place nearby, and we were all drunk, and I just was waiting for food and drawing on napkins, and just kept drawing those 2. They were easy to draw, and they ended up doing a lot of nice things for me. We got Space Ghost kind of from that, and Deadline, and the book has mostly been in print for the last 20-something years, some collection or other.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
The Dark Horse is my main publisher right now, and the book's still out in paperback. The hardcover sold through a couple of printings. So it's, for 2 little drunken dopes, excuse me, I'm getting the cat again.
Oh, no, it's all good.
They've done pretty okay. And that's, I guess, my signature characters. Although these days I'm mostly doing commissions with them and just, drawing them from my followers on social media, that I am doing comics with them, because there's really not a lot of places to do 2-page, 5-page little humor comics. The industry's changed a lot over the last 30 years, so they'd be a web comic now, I guess, if I was starting out. But I'm in a situation. I've got a family. I'm in my 50s. I can't do those strips for free. you know?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it's a hard way to monetize them. I might do a few for my Patreon once things start getting a little more scheduled on there. But yeah, mostly I just draw them for people, not doing too many comic strips, but if at all. Yeah, but they're they're kind of like my emblems,
Well,
my little logos.
it's funny reading your stuff from them and then to Beasts of Burden, and it's like you see kind of like, I guess you're growing up as a person as you're creating these things. No.
There's no growing up. It's just redirecting. It's just putting the words together in different ways. Beasts of Burden is now, I think, 20 years old or something crazy like that. 2003. I don't know. So yeah, it's just. I mean, I just got somebody on. Is that the cat? Oh, get off the computer. Whoops. That was bad. What did you just do?
I still see you. So
I don't see anything. Hold on a sec.
Okay.
I see a Zoom screen. Let's see. You might be coming back. Nope. Hold on one second. Thanks, Kat. There you go. That's great. Where'd she go? She's eating. Okay. Yeah, I got to keep her locked in the studio because she's just being introduced to the house. But the other cat, who's not going to be happy. I don't remember what I was saying. What was the last question? I don't remember.
We were talking about growing up as you write. And you said that wasn't the case. You just rearrange.
I mean,
the words.
I've always been doing stuff besides gag strips and Milk and Cheese. I wrote a Predator series. I wrote a Mask series. I did the Bill and Ted comics. I wrote and penciled those.
I loved those.
Thank you. I've always been working small press, big press, or I've done book covers, CD covers, animation writing with Sarah. I mean, we bounced all over the place. I've been in Esquire magazine. I've been in Maximum Rock and Roll. It was just, I have a lot of interests, I guess, and I was able to connect with different readers on different things. I like horror movies and horror books and weird fiction and things like that. And, I used to play D&D when I was a kid. I like punk rock and a lot of different types of music. So, I mean, I like all kinds of comics. So, these things all come out in different ways. So I like, it allows you to wear more hats and to be able to try to keep your career going when you're not somebody whose goal is to just do Marvel and DC stuff.
Yeah.
And that goal has become less important to the industry on the whole from when I started out. I was working in a comic shop and independents were just really starting up. And your goal back then was usually you were going to work for one of the major comic companies, which was Marvel and DC. Or a lot of people wanted to work for some of the small ones that were cropping up like Eclipse or First, and then eventually jump to Marvel and DC. And there's plenty of people who still want to do that, but I always wrote my own stories for myself to draw. And I found out that I can write a superhero comic a lot better than I could draw one, at least for the mainstream companies. Like we wrote a Human Torch Marvel Snapshot that came out last year. If I drew that, it would look like a Milk and Cheese strip, probably. It wouldn't really. And there are some people who don't have a problem with that, but in the direct market, they really would rather stuff looked, quote, realistic, unquote. I don't have the style for that. And so, yeah, I always loved Marvel comics, and I really got into DC when I was in high school because a lot of the Marvel creators went over to DC by that time. But I like a little bit of everything. And so that's kind of what my career has been. I've worked for most of the older companies, and I've written and drawn for a variety of books. We wrote dialogue for a video game a year or two ago. We've done a lot of different oddball stuff, Sarah and I, my wife and I, and worked for Yo Gabba Gabba, worked for some TV shows, did some design work, did some writing work.
My kids loved that show, by the way. Yo Gabba Gabba was good to watch as an adult.
Our child was the perfect age for when that came out. And that was like the perfect job. I loved working on that show, and it was a happy accident because we had hired the Aquabats to do the themes for a pilot I did for the Adult Swim back in 2002. Welcome to Eltingville, based on the comics from Dork, the Eltingville Club comics. And they kind of, when Christian and his partner put Yo Gabba Gabba together, they hired a lot of people who they wanted to reciprocate for people who did stuff for them during their career. We were big Acrobats fans, and we had met them a couple of times. And so we went from designing a character. We designed Super Martian Robot Girl. And then those were being done as these short, like Electric Company Spider-Man live action shorts. And Nickelodeon didn't like the way they were coming out. So at the last minute, they turned them into Flash animation. They had the soundtracks, they had the actors' dialogue recorded. It was not recorded live. So they were able to take all that, and we very last minute started taking the footage from them, redesigning everything as two-dimensional flat characters from live action, and basically adapting these live action shorts into Flash animation shorts of the same length with a very short turnover because the show was like getting scheduled.
Yeah.
And they had a hole in it after this. So we went from designing the character to then drawing all the live action shorts into animation and boarding them a little bit for the directors. And then there was the latter half of them had no footage, so we were able to create everything whole cloth. And then we got to write one and do a couple of the cartoon shorts, story time. And we ended up writing episodes. We ended up co-writing 3 episodes with Christian, and Sarah co-wrote one with Christian that I really had very little input on, but my name got accidentally left on the credits. So yeah, it was pretty wild. We're actually in a lot of we did 4 episodes that we wrote, and it's our only experience writing live action of any kind. And we had to write some song lyrics, and it was terrific.
That sounds like a dream job. It really does.
It was. The only thing about it was the turnaround was kind of hard, and it was on the animation. It was a little hard to. I found it very intimidating to adapt to writing the live action for a kids show. We had done kids comics and whatnot, but it was very much not a Milk and Cheese or Beast of Burden type of project.
Yeah, yeah.
So you don't want to do anything pandering, and you don't want to do anything that's just immature. You want to do something that's still fun, because we knew that adults were watching this with their kids. We knew that there were a lot of stoner kids who loved it. But at the same time, it's mainly for the kids, but you wanted to make it something that wasn't lousy. That you want to make something that was fun, had some references for the adults, not in the way that Space Ghost did or anything like that, but in the way that nods to old B-52 songs when we were introducing the Munoz family and things like that. And it was kind of based on Song for a Future Generation, the way that they were doing shout outs to what their hobbies were. I mean, it wasn't using the lyrics, it was just that's what we had in mind.
Yeah.
And one of the creatures that we designed was a nod to an old Japanese monster movie, and we got to do some superheroes for one episode. It was pretty cool. It was just it was the best job, I think. It was that and Space Ghost and working on Eltonville were the most freedom and the most fun.
That sounds really rewarding. Yeah, and
it was. I missed them. I missed the work. I missed the paychecks.
There's a hole right now in kids television for shows like that. Like Yo Gabba Gabba had. I mean, they had so many good indie bands on.
Oh yeah.
That was super fun. How was it working with your wife?
Nothing quite like having John Reese from Rocket from the Crypt and Hot Snakes and the Night Marchers introducing bands that you knew, and then a Cactus with Tim Armstrong's voice. It was very. It was like all the old zines. Everybody from the old punk zines and fanzines from the '90s were on Yo Gabba Gabba through the Aquabats and everything. It was just really great.
And it looked like they were having a blast too. They were in on it. They got this is for kids, and we're
got some schmuck in a motorcycle out there. I mean, from what I understand, a lot of the people who ended up on the show, a lot of them were just calling up and asking to be on the show.
Oh, that's cool.
Their kids loved the show, and they were like, anything that I can do. I think that's how Speedo from Rocket from the Crypt, because he's the Swami, because he's had a Swami Records, and I think he's one of the people who called up and said, "Hey, is there anything that you can use me for?" And it was just always it was a surprising show. And the thing is, kids didn't have to know any of this stuff to.
Yeah, with the parents.
For me, it was
totally
great to see, to see these bands showing up, to see Cornelius thrashing out on the Numbers song was just so cool, because we were already fans. And then, Biz Markie and everything. But the kids don't have to know the reputations of anybody. They just have to enjoy the show. And it did a great job of doing that.
And the songs were catchy as hell too.
Two levels of and then also a lot of people who are animation heads and were, design heads and just, people who are into the kind of, new wave Sid and Marty Krofft aspects of it. There were just a lot of things to plug into. I mean, it just hit on a lot of really great levels. It's a great show. I wish it was still running, whether we were involved with it or not. I feel like they could have done a lot more episodes.
How did you land the Space Ghost gig? Somebody
had given the first Milk and Cheese trade paperback from SLG, the Fun with Milk and Cheese book, to Mike Lazo at the Adult Swim. And he read it and he enjoyed it, and he thought, and this is when Space Ghost was just gearing up. Only a few episodes had aired, and they were still trying to find the voice. I think at the point where he called us, Zorak was still being called a locust and not a mantis. So that's really early. It's pretty early before Lokar shows up, I guess. And he thought that Milk and Cheese's dialogue would be good for banter between Zorak and Moltar, who they didn't have, as he put it. I'm trying to remember exactly, but in essence, they weren't quite sure how those characters should be, what their voice was, what their added, and he just thought that they'd be good for those characters because they had Space Ghost kind of figured out. Whoa, cat. They had his stupidity worked out. And excuse me 1 second while I cat proof. Okay. And they asked me to do a sample script, and I ended up working on it with Sarah because it was a really weird. It wasn't linear storytelling. It was a series of non sequiturs and gags cutting up these interviews with real actors, the real celebrities, quotes, and the cartoon characters who had very limited animation. So there wasn't like in animation, owing to budget, you can do almost anything. When we were working on Superman or Batman Beyond, if you wanted to have giant ape smashing stuff, you wrote giant ape smashing stuff. And on Space Ghost, you basically didn't write much direction at all because they couldn't afford to animate anything. The joke was you could dig in your couch and find enough change to make an episode of Space Ghost. So I went down to Atlanta after we wrote our first Gum Disease, and when I was in Atlanta, we did a table reading, and they kicked all the ideas around, and everybody at the reading, Mike, Keith Crawford, who's the person that was who we dealt with the most, who I think he just retired. Keith, I love Keith. Keith's terrific, and a bunch of the other writers on the show, producers. And everybody was kind of, saying, let's cut this. Hey, I've got an idea for a joke. And when it came around to it, I said, the way that we work this out is exactly the way that Sarah, my wife, and I, my girlfriend at the time, we co-wrote this basically based on the way that this is being done. And I wanted to talk to you about that. And they were like, okay, just, we'll credit the two of you. And they liked what we were doing. And then we were regular writers for 2 years, 3 years, a few years. I was always very late on everything because I was very, very intimidated, and looking back on it, my imposter syndrome was flaring up really, really bad. So I always felt bad about the schedule. But we ended up doing about 13 episodes, and a couple that didn't end up getting used, and that was tremendous fun. That was just being goofy for money.
Oh yeah.
And, that and Yo Gabba Gabba, the best experiences that we had. And yeah, Sarah and I worked together on pretty much all of our animation scripts and projects. I think we've co-wrote everything. We didn't do it. We've worked on about 8 series, scattered episodes. Yo Gabba Gabba, DC Nation, we did The Middlemen, Space Ghost, Superman, we did 4 episodes. Batman Beyond, we did 1. We did some doctoring on Crayon Shinshan, some punch up on that. That was awful, and we did the Eltingville pilot, and then we did some pilots. We did 3 or 4 pitch Bibles and series Bibles for shows that didn't end up getting picked up. One was Commandy for Jack Kirby's Commandy.
Oh man, that would be amazing.
For the Adult Swim, which is I think the best thing we did. We did something for Bruce Timm for Warner Brothers that didn't get picked up. I don't know if that was very serious anyway, because Bruce Timm always ends up back on the DC superhero stuff. And we did Andy Watts. Back in the day, we did Andy Watson's Skeleton Key, his independent comic Skeleton Key. We did the Bible for that. And I think there was one other one, but now I can't remember. But yeah, I mean, but we haven't done anything since we did one Ben 10 segment a couple of years ago for the relaunch. And I think that's been it. I think, that's the end of our TV career, probably.
So when you introduced Livewire on the Superman comic or Superman cartoon, did you think that would ever get traction in the actual comics?
No, we didn't care, because you got to understand, we didn't create her. We were part of the team that created her.
Oh, okay.
Just like the Supergirl. Whenever I see somebody saying that, whenever I see it, it's online because it's the way that things are rolled out. Our names are on the script. Livewire was created by probably Paul Dini and Bruce did some design sketches of her. Other artists, we had been sent sketches of that didn't get used. Livewire was a character that we were given that script. We were given a paragraph. The original scripts were very, very different because the original Livewire script was going to, some of the material that was going to be brought in there was Superman basically becoming public, basically coming out to the public as, I'm Superman, I'm here to do this, that, and the other thing. And there were a lot of people who were frightened of him and scared of him and fear-mongering, which does stay in the episode, that Livewire is drumming up a lot of anti-Superman sentiment. But it was going to be that this was the first time he basically was forced to deal with the press and talk to people, if you know what I'm saying. Like he wasn't Spider-Man hiding from people, but he wasn't actually stopping to discuss anything with people. He was just doing his Man of Steel job and then going home. It was supposed to be an earlier episode, and they were going to use this as a way to integrate him publicly in the show. That it was like he's basically his coming out party. And Livewire, the whole thing with Livewire was going to be a lot more. The rhetoric was going to be a lot more violent in that she was going to be talking about how she was under the impression that we're all being suckered, that Superman is the first of an advanced guard to soften us up with his good deeds. And then this army of Kryptonians or whatever is going to come down here and crush us. Yeah. Which is actually kind of worth thinking about when you think about it. I mean, Superman shows up, he acts like, Superman, which most people would never do. They'd probably just start killing people left and right. And it'd be hard to trust this dude. The whole thing was that he would have us in the palm of his hand, and then he would crush it. The story's changed a lot as it went through. They wanted to drop the angle of all that because there was going to be a press conference, and we were going to meet other characters and whatnot. And some of the, when a show starts, they have this Bible with all these characters, and they're expecting to use them, like the character of Bibbo, who I don't think anybody likes. And we were forced to use him in one episode, and eventually he disappears. But he's in the Bible, and they were going to find a use for him, and blah blah blah. But you can see certain characters take off, and certain characters don't over time. And that's what happened with that episode. They were trying to use some of the media characters from the Bible and introduce this kind of Harley-esque Superman villain. And I like the idea that there was this anti-alien sentiment and that there was fear of him and whatnot. But I guess, you know what I mean? You're trying to tell these one-episode stories and stuff, and there is a through line over them. You don't want to get too bogged down in the kind of thing that works better in a comic. Yeah. Now with streaming and everything, people really like having more texture and more detail. It's expected as superhero stuff is really just taken over media. But I think that there were just certain rough edges and certain let's not mess with that got shaved off. Livewire was, she was already designed when we wrote that episode. We basically just gave her a personality and a manner. We worked on some of the powers and things that she could do. We came up with some of the weird ideas, like the way she was using copying machines to do animated flip books of herself and things like that, and what she was doing to the city. But we basically just, our main contribution was giving her a voice and a personality and plotting out elements of that episode. It was supposed to be a much larger fight at the end. The budget kind of precluded that, but it was also our first episode, and I think it's our weakest episode because the show was still getting its feet. We were supposed to be in the first season. I think we ended up as the next season. So the producers and the artists, the creators they're all figuring it out. I mean, shows take a while to find their footing. They walk they crawl, then they walk. And the first season can often be a lot of fun, but it's often a lot of contradictory decisions, figuring out which characters are really connecting with the creators, but then finding out if those characters connect with the viewers. It's not always the same thing. And so the episode's a little stiff, but I like the character, and I they put her in the comics, and but we did not create her. She was somebody created her. Somebody came up with her name, somebody came up with her costume, and my cat is destroying something. And then she was handed over to us to kind of further bake.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a lot more input, and I think we had a lot more of our creative DNA got into Supergirl. We were in on that from the beginning. And
cool.
Obviously, we did not create Supergirl, but the WB version for the Superman series, Sarah and I, Paul, Alan, Bruce, other people, they wanted to make her, a lot of thought was put into that debut. And unfortunately, the two-parter ended up not being what it originally was, which was going to be a much more action-oriented assault on Apocalypse at the end, because the Comet plot line where they were using the kids to help them make a magnet to bring that was totally left field, added at the last moment, pulling a can out from under the original, because a producer who had signed off on the original two-part storyline balked when they realized that we were going to have a war on Apocalypse, and that producer was like, I'm having a war on Apocalypse. No one else can have a war on Apocalypse. So we went through like 20 drafts of that goddamn thing. We end up with another writer on the credits it was very frustrating, but I like a lot of things going on in that episode. But originally what the real ending was it wasn't that they were bringing a comet to hit the Earth, which is funny because if you see early interviews with the Superman producers, they said, we're not going to do things like have meteors hitting the Earth and Superman's going to be pushing them out into space, which is exactly what we did, what we were forced to do. Originally, what it was going to be was that all the Intergang and Granny Goodness and the Furies were basically doing Pleasure Island from Pinocchio.
Oh, wow.
They were bringing in all these homeless kids and these lost kids and these runaways, and they were going to be transporting them, suckering them into this gang, and then transporting them to Apocalypse, where they were basically going to waffle iron them into parademons. And that was going to be shown on Apocalypse as this kind of corrupt works of Desaad, and some of the other Apocalypse villains were going to basically be genetically transforming Thanagarians, Earth people, Hawk people, Martians, whatever these alien races were. They were basically capturing them and turning them into parademons as soldiers and cannon fodder. And the kids who were going to get turned into these things were all ultimately never going to come back. They were going to actually get wiped out. I mean, it was going to be a really kind of semi-sad episode and Darkseid was in it a lot more. And there was just going to be this big rescue mission to break this up and save these kids and destroy the factory. All the Apocalypse characters were there. I'm trying to remember Dr. Bedlam. I mean, I'm a sucker for that, for Kirby. So I was trying to get as much stuff, but we got the Dog Soldiers in there. It was really cool to get the female Furies in there, but yeah, it would have really, Makari, I wanted to get like everybody, Glorious Godfrey. I'm sure that they all eventually showed up at some point when Darkseid and everybody became the main spine villains for JLA and whatnot. But it was like, this is my one chance to get some Kirby stuff into our freelance career. So I was things get changed. There was, for a while in the decision making, the Jack Kirby character of Dan Turpin was going to be found in the factories. He was going to be found on Apocalypse.
Oh,
he was not killed. He was boom tubed up and was being held prisoner. But they decided that his death really worked really well and really kind of should be left alone. So, yeah, they were thinking that they were going to bring Turpin back, and he was going to be in that last episode, all torn up and getting the shit kicked out of him routine, with the gun and, basically Calabac punching him and all that stuff. So, which would have been cool, but I think it was the right decision to not do that, to let that stand. And so that was a long answer to your it was what was coming to mind. That was a lot of fun, but the problem with Superman and Batman Beyond was that it always did feel as if, well, I mean, it's pretty typical. It wasn't, we never felt that it was personal or anything like that, but you knew that a lot of things that you did were going to get cut.
Yeah.
And on Space, we were very lucky on Space Ghost and on Yo Gabba Gabba and on our Eltingville pilot that we were really trusted. The writers were really trusted. The artists were really trusted. And there were no clashes of ego. And we knew our budget was our budget. So it wasn't like in Batman Beyond, we had designed this big ending, which I really like the Splicers episode. I think a lot of it works. Unfortunately, they added some material that ended up cutting out some of the backstory of the villain Cuvier. I don't know if is he called the Chimera or something like that? I can't remember, but the guy who had all the animal drugs in him and at the end broke out into this kind of like mix of creatures and lost control of his body. But we had all these different changes for him, influenced by like The Thing and by Akira, with the body flowing out into all these different states. I mean, we do it anyway. We did get that, but we were like, you can't have that many designs because the more designs, the more budget. We were like, oh yeah, got it, no problem. We had to cut it down to 3. The only thing we lost in that one was that they forgot to change the script to reflect that we don't learn about Cuvier being involved with, his father was involved with Man-Bat, Kurt, whatever his name is, or something like that. And that's where the Splicer stuff kind of came from Man-Bat, from the doctor who created the Man-Bat serum. It was a continuation of that research. And there was a nightmare that had Man-Bat in it. And so at one point, Bruce Wayne, the old Bruce Wayne, goes, oh, I've got some anti-splicing stuff. But we don't know why he has it, because they cut the Man-Bat connection. But he has it because he's dealt with Man-Bat. So that was the only thing that was bummer, because I hate logic breaks, because the writer always gets dinged for that. We were like, oh, no. Because he literally shows up with these vials that will treat some of the characters. And we're like, I like the Splicers episodes. We got some wrestling in there. We got some fun jokes. We got some goofy stuff in there, some good action. I was very happy. We were going to work on more Batman Beyond, but then we were offered the Eltingville pilot at the Adult Swim, and we were like, yeah, chance of getting your own TV show.
I don't blame you.
That would have been nice. But we got a pilot out of it, so that was cool.
So,
yeah,
what's
that's
more
That's our
fulfilling?
career. Like I told you, we're done. We're done.
No.
Yeah,
What's more fulfilling for you, like doing the TV writing or doing the comics?
Doing the comics.
For real?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Everybody, people tend to assume that the animation and the TV stuff, I love it, but it's not yours.
Yeah.
And nobody even seems to know that you did it. We can't get people, we'll tell people to put the animation stuff, like when we're doing a signing, put Yo Gabba Gabba on there. They just, you tend not to get people coming to a convention or buying your work because of your TV work.
Yeah.
But the main reason I like making comics is because that's the language I understand best. I mean, I studied animation in school. That's what I wanted to be, an animator, but I realized that I liked telling stories more than I liked animating. And I doubted that I would ever, I didn't have a good personality for working on big things. I would never have had an animation career. We would never have written what we wrote if somebody didn't notice my comic book work. I can kind of understand comics and control them. I like that I can write and draw them. I like that I can write things like Beasts of Burden that I can't draw and have Jill Thompson or Ben Dewey work on that. But for me, the books, I don't have any, the books that are my name on them are the books that I'm most proud of. The TV shows, I'm very, very proud of them, but they're not my babies, it's all part of a whole, writing and drawing, telling stories, telling jokes, cracking wise, having things blow up, fisticuffs, cool monsters. But I can't call the shots on that stuff. And I like being able to call the shots on my work as much as possible. And that's why most of the work that I've been doing over the last few years have been creator-owned, horror and fantasy stuff and weird fiction, or, my joke books, my humor stuff that I'm doing for my Patreon, continuing with. I'm sort of putting a Dork 12 together on my Patreon. But I mean, we put the same effort into all of it. I definitely am more nervous when I'm working on the animation stuff. I mean, I get it, you know what I mean? It's seen as, in the last 20 years, I've made a lot of jokes about the fact that a lot of people use comics as a stepping stone to try to get into other media. I made comics to make comics. When I was working in animation, I was still making comics. I mean, it's what I naturally think of. I'm not a novelist. I'm not an essayist. I love writing and drawing stories. And I mean, that's the format that I see when I dream very small and I aim very small. It's something that I'm trying to change in the last, however many years I have left in my life. I never thought about doing a lot of these things on my own. I fell sideways into comics without having to do too many portfolio showings, which I hated, or doing interviews. I just got in at the right time when a lot of people were getting hired because of the black and white boom. And I got better and I was able to stay on. And Milk and Cheese gave me a little bit of notoriety back when the industry was smaller and everybody kind of knew each other. You'd go to San Diego, they didn't have parties for every studio and it was like one party in a hotel room that Kimiko put on with graffiti. And there were people from Marvel, DC, Fantagraphics, First, Eclipse, and I was invited because I met a bunch of people and made them laugh. And you'd have superhero artists and you'd have small press people and autobio people, and very small back in the day, and that's how I ended up meeting a lot of different people and ended up working for a lot of different companies back in the day. I mean, nowadays it's very easy to get lost because there's so much talent out there who have access to eyeballs through the internet, and so many people at conventions now. Conventions have become their own career.
Yeah.
Doing covers has become a thing for a lot of different people. Doing pinups, doing people's gaming characters. I mean, there are so many other ways to express yourself and to make money in this industry right now. At the current time, I'm not doing any comics work. I have no comics work whatsoever. I am only working on commissions, my Patreon, and selling artwork and T-shirts on TeePublic of my characters and things like that. I don't know how long that can be sustained, but that option wasn't there for me back in the day. So as I'm getting either as I'm getting elbowed out of the comics market, which is what happens to most of us, especially since the monthly floppy comic is no longer viable for me. Putting out, there's no small press humor floppies that come out every couple of months. There's no one creator anthologies really that are getting into comic stores or being solicited as such. It's a book oriented. The small press has become very book oriented.
Yeah.
Right. The monthly comic. And I thrived when I was doing an issue of Milk and Cheese, and then an issue of Dork, an issue of Hectic Planet. I would take all my creator-owned stuff that I did for zines or for magazines or for kids. Disney Adventures is gone. Nickelodeon magazine is gone. Mad is gone. I was working for Mad for 10 years. I couldn't have used that material, but that was a great job. And Mad is now a very, very smaller closed shop with doing specials and mostly reprints. So it's very tough to be a humor cartoonist, and it's very tough to. It's been very hard for me to navigate.
Yeah.
What is best for me right now, pragmatically? I mean, right now I need money more than I need to make comics, and maybe this is something that I should have been doing years ago. Is concentrating on my brand, for lack of a better way of putting it, rather than always thinking I need to be making comics. I'm 56. I think a lot of people my age and younger and older, you get so fixated on the idea that you must always have something in previews, or you must always have something that's coming out, published by yourself or somebody else. You got to have that comic. You got to have that new book or collection. And to be honest, the page rates have kind of been like the minimum wage.
Yeah.
They're not. The price of comics goes up. The money seems to, for certain publishers, seems to be not too bad for their lifestyles. The page rate doesn't budge.
Yeah,
fact,
exactly.
There's some people are trying to cut the page rates they're offering you. I can't work in 2021 for the same page rate that I was getting in 2001, 2011. I mean, but a lot of us still do it. I still do it. I mean, a lot of us are so into comics, and so not only are we used to the way that this industry has lurched forward for 30 years, we're used to always working this way. We've got to turn pages out. We've got to make more material. We've got to get stories out. You're paid by the page, and if you're lucky, you've got royalties coming in. But at some point, you have to realize, unless you are somebody who can turn out 5, 6 scripts a month, 10 scripts a month, some people who see, I don't know what their scripts look like, but
it's wild.
I'm sure they're putting a lot of the heavy lifting on their artists, who should probably be paid to co-plot things that say, page 1, they're fighting. I'm like, that's okay, that's writing. That's not how I write. That's not how I write, and that's why I think my books are very. I think that Blackwood and Beasts of Burden are very full, realized comics, and while we can't bang them out, and they're difficult to draw because they're animals and they're semi-realistic, and at least you don't have to draw cars much. But it's hard to draw animals. There's not that many people in the industry who can do this kind of book, in my opinion. And people gotta. I don't want to work on a series where I have to keep speeding up and make the book not as good as I think it can be. And maybe that's a bit of a diva thing. Maybe that's a bit of a dilettante thing. But I've always if you're familiar with my work, I have always provided value for money, whether it's my humor comics or my horror comics or my superhero comics that I've done. I do not write 3 panels a page of characters sitting around on couches talking to each other about how they're feeling. I write, and when I work with Sarah, we work on very, very tight story-oriented, multiple character, detailed, textured dialogue that's considered comics. And this is not just me, there's a lot of people who work this way, but I don't have the push of DC or Marvel career to go to Image and be able to take advantage of that. I've never really had a following because of the work that I've done. It's always been goofy work at DC and Marvel, or unimportant work, or work that's just that doesn't matter, like World's Funnest or Fight Man or something like that. But the fact is, I do a lot of one-shot stories and things like that, and miniseries, and I'm not going to be doing 12 issues, so I know I can push the plot a little bit or nose one little thing along. I've got to finish everything I write. I've got to actually stick a landing, which is something that I'm jealous of in superhero books of this modern day, because for the last 2 years, you don't have to stick an ending in most of these books. You'd have to stick a crossover segue. Yeah. I would love to write a book that in issue 4 or issue 8 or issue 12, you say, wow, that's something. What's going to happen next? Go buy,
somebody else's problem now.
Go buy, or they're writing it, but it leads into the crossover, or it leads into a major event, or it never ends because you don't need a real ending, because the Avengers are going to go right into something else, or Spider-Man's going to go right into something else. It must be very nice. I don't have the ability to write a monthly series. That's a talent that I don't have. But it must be nice to have characters that you don't have to introduce all the time, and you don't have to explain their world or explain what they do. It's Spider-Man. Nowadays, you have movies doing all the heavy lifting for that. You don't, you never have to go, oh no, who's that guy? You know what I mean? Especially when now you can write a story where you have the X-Men show up and little boxes are above them all the time, since Claremont stays. So you literally don't have to write dialogue that explains things. You just go, I don't know, Colossus, Sunfire, Hawkeye. I mean, I couldn't write like that. That's just... It's just not organic to my thinking. So yeah, I mean, so you're going to have a limited career in the comic book, in the superhero comic book industry, in the direct market, when you don't have a name for a good run of something at Marvel or DC. There are very few Jeff Smiths, and Dan Clowes, and I'm trying to think, Kate Beaton, people who can just, you know what I mean? They just become top dog of what they do. Their talent is recognized, and it's a perfect storm of certain things, and they just have a locked-in career and locked-in followers. I have seen my royalties reports, and I have definitely lost a lot of readers over the last 30 years, over the last 25 years. I mean, I've just never, people who liked my work don't know I'm still around, because I'm not doing Milk and Cheese as a comic. Beasts of Burden, people don't know what Milk and Cheese is, some of them. I've had I guess schizophrenic is not a great way to put it, but I've had a very scattered, I jump from whatever my next interesting thing to do is I didn't have a career plan, kind of the way I'm talking right now and bouncing off a million things and not letting you talk. It's kind of the way my career has been. I did something for Disney I got a call from Disney Adventures. We did Kid Blastoff. I got a page to do for Esquire. I did a book cover in the interior illustrations, but I never got an agent and said, let me do more book illustration. We never got an agent and said, let's do more animation. I just never built up a career where you can peg it down to anything other than back in the day, I was the milk and cheese guy. And now I'm, to some people, the guy who writes Beasts of Burden, which got kind of fucked because of a 10-year gap between collections because our schedule was hell. That was my first really successful project that wasn't milk and cheese. And unfortunately, Jill and I just did not strike while the iron was hot and get that second collection out within a few years. And we lost a lot of momentum. That first book was a bona fide success. It's been in print since 2010.
I was about to say, it's ultimately I think it's evergreen in that
I think so too, but
constantly be discovered by a new audience.
I agree with you. I'm not going to lie. It really has been. And I was at a comic shop today for the first time in a while, and they had just done a reorder of my stuff, which was terrific. And it's the comic shop that I used to work, one of the comic shops I used to work at back in the day. And the Nick and Ronnie, who JHU Books and Comics, which used to be Jim Haley's Universe, which is Staten Island, New York chain, Manhattan. And they had a bunch of my Dark Horse stuff, my own stuff, and my collaborative stuff. And I was like, oh, you didn't order the first Beast of Burden book. And they said, yeah, we sold them. And I was like, that's great. That's just great to hear. But the thing is, the first book is an evergreen. People don't seem to be treating the second and third collections as necessary to get.
Oh, man.
And I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. I mean, if they're only fans of Jill Thompson and they don't like my writing that much, or they're just somebody who wants the original, they only like Bon Scott AC/DC or whatever the heck. I can understand that. But the second book is all Jill except for one story, and it has the Hellboy crossover. We lost a lot of our readers from not putting out that second book. And Beast has always been a kind of thing that I was writing them and we were waiting to get them done, and we were getting one issue out here, 2 issues out here. We never got a full 4 issues out in a row in any timely fashion after the first miniseries.
Yeah.
We got the Hellboy crossover, did very, very good numbers, got a lot of new people introduced to the characters, and we didn't get a new issue out for a while. It's just not the way to run a business, a railroad. And we won Eisners for a bunch of these things. I mean, the last thing, but they were so many years apart. I mean, we won, I think, 8 Eisners and a Harvey for Beast. I mean, that doesn't usually turn into much business, but the fact is, obviously, there were people who were into it. And now it's like I feel like I have to jump up, scream up and down to get people to still take the book seriously, even though we have another artist on it, because I think Ben Dewey's doing a beautiful job. And I think the books are still good as they ever were. And I think the characters are the same, and the sales on the follow up of the Beasts of Burden storyline are a fraction of what we did on the first book. And we're getting some really nice feedback on the new series.
That's awesome.
Maybe people have settled in with the new look, that the book looks different, maybe because I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what the future of the book is. I don't know. It's, in a perfect world, I'd be writing that book bi-monthly or doing 2 miniseries a year, because we now have the Wise Dogs stories and the Burden Hill stories. There's a ton of characters. I have a ton of notes about the background, what's going to happen in the future. The Burden Hill storyline that we started off in 2003 in the Book of Hauntings, I know how that ends. I know what happens to the characters. I have all these side stories that I want to do. The next series was approved. I want to do another crossover. I want to do another fetch with another known character, and the creator will actually draw it. but and the creator is into it, but I don't know if the support's from the readers or from Dark Horse at this point, because the pandemic really punched a hole in everyone's plans.
Oh yeah.
And the numbers on the second Blackwood series were abysmal, and that came out right as that was just chopped by the pandemic. I mean, I'm not complaining. I mean, look, I'm healthy. We got our second shots. Nobody close to me has been sick. The least concern I should have is that our comic book isn't doing well. But, it's still a reality that you got to work in this society.
Oh yeah.
To pay your bills. And Blackwood is something that I'd like to continue doing. Veronica Fish has, we've talked about it. She's
fantastic.
She is fantastic. I'd like to continue that, but I cannot afford to make comics right now and that's not just the industry, that's also the way I work. I am a slow worker, and this is an industry about speed unless you're a superstar, and I'm just not a superstar. I'm a mid-carder. If you're into wrestling, I'm a mid-carder. I think I'm necessary for the industry because you need to have a mid-list. You need to have a Mr. Perfect has to come out and get beat and entertain people and be a villain, and you need it all to fill the shelves and to fill the niches. And I think Beasts of Burden is a terrific comic. I think Blackwood is really, really good and can develop into more, but I don't know if I can function in that system, at least not right now. So Beasts is the last thing, the new series, Occupied Territory. I have no writing or drawing for comics jobs lined up. That's my own call. I basically am taking a step back to see what shakes out. And I'm not getting any offers these days. There's plenty of people out there who are better artists than I am. I don't think there's as many people who are better writer than me. There certainly are scores of people who write better than me, but I think that I am a very, very good comics writer with a proven track record, but I don't know anybody at most of the companies. I pissed off some people at some of the companies that I don't want to work for, such as Boom. I mean, I don't even know if they've noticed me, but I just have no interest in working for some of the companies that I think just pay garbage and take advantage of a younger talent coming into the industry who is so willing to work on comics that they're practically willing to pay to play.
Yeah.
To be able to work on Agretsuko or Rick and Morty or whatever characters they love so much. Just like there are people who are willing to do whatever it takes to work on Spider-Man or what have you. The thing is, if that's all you want to do, you've got to get a job at Marvel if you want to do Spider-Man, or Boom, I guess, because it's insane that everybody's licensing their characters out. If all you want to do in your life is work on a specific character that's owned by somebody else, and you don't cast your net wider than that, if you can't work on other stuff, if you can't do book covers, or you can't write jokes for something, or work on TV, or design things, you're not going to be the success story, most likely. There's very few people who are going to get that shot at X-Men, Spider-Man, Avengers, Batman. There's only so many things coming out, even though if it seems like there's a million. It's like only shooting for bullseyes. If you can splash into a triple 20 and get a job doing Yo Gabba Gabba, or design Guy Davis, designing monsters. He's left comics to design monsters. If you can do other things and have an open mind of your career, you can stick around a lot longer. If I was here just for drawing superhero comics, which is what I wanted to do when I was 20, I would never have made it. But luckily, the industry broke open, and you could do stupid comics about a milk and a cheese, and somehow have a viable career. That doesn't work right now because there are no more independent anthologies. There's a lot of anthologies, but a lot of them are kickstarted by groups of cartoonists that know each other, or places like Iron Circus that take that edit and package that stuff and bring people together for a certain topic. But there's no like Dark Horse Presents or the anthologies that Fantagraphics had, Oni Double Feature. There's no deadline. There's no Deadline USA. Yeah. And that's where I thrived. I was able to do lots of little pages for those things, own them, collect them all, package them with new stuff at my publisher SLG, and keep that going. I do 2 pages for a heavy metal zine in Finland, and they sent me $20 or whatever. I was in the Onion for a while. They were paying me to run milk and cheese and strips.
Oh, cool.
Back before it was super successful. It was just the Wisconsin paper. But I mean, you cast your net out. You throw a lot of lines out. And I tell students and new people, I was like, if all you want to do is Harley, or Doctor Who, you've got to deal with the gatekeepers who own those characters and who license those characters. If you're not somebody who wants to write your own stuff or draw your own stuff, the gene pool is huge right now because the internet has allowed people from every country on this earth, except I guess certain totalitarian regimes, to try to get a job working on these characters. I'm old enough where I've seen this industry go from, you had to be in New York pretty much.
Yeah.
New York conventions and go to DC, go to Marvel, maybe go to Archie. If Kamiko Charlton was still around in some weird form. Mad was in their office, and you had to pound the pavement to do. I was doing stuff for Penthouse, Reflex magazine. There was still a lot more magazines that were looking for cartoons, free weeklies and things like that. It was very, very different. Now you can live anywhere that has the internet to send your work in. And so we're competing with a lot more people. I think it's beautiful to see all these new voices, these new faces, these new talents of all kinds coming into the industry. It sucks for me as a freelancer. My phone stopped ringing years ago, and then the internet stopped calling. I don't get too many calls, which is why now I'm basically working like a lot of older artists. I'm working more for my fan base that I've created over the years than I am for making the comics that they used to pick up. It's kind of like a survival mechanism, to be quite honest, and it's not a bad one. I don't know how long I can keep it up because I don't have the DC Marvel reputation that some people can really do well with on commissions and original art. I don't have Batman pages to sell. I'm not the person you go to for Batman. There's a million people to go to for Batman or Spider-Man or Harley Quinn or Doctor. You know what I'm saying? I'm not someone connected with those characters. And there's only so many people who want Bill and Ted sketches or Milk and Cheese sketches. So it's tough. This has been a very weird year and a half. At some point, I'm probably going to burn out my whole following and get some more work. But it's been working out. Fingers crossed, not too bad.
Awesome.
Because I'm not working on the comics, I'm able to really push this stuff more. The Patreon, the art sales. I'm able to the T-shirts did the first month that we started bringing back our old T-shirt designs from Milk and Cheese and Dork. They did way better than we had any. I was hoping we did in 1 month what I was hoping to do in a year. And,
wow.
It's not sustainable. Again, it dies down. But yeah, I'm like living on commissions and art sales and selling merchandise and books, our comics. It's really weird to basically have turned into a House of Fun store. I mean, I've got more books. I've got like 4 collections. 5. Oh God, we've got a bunch of collections coming out this year, but no new work. It's a weird feeling, but that's where I'm at right now. You didn't ask that, but I mean, I'm just blurred. I haven't eaten today. I say that in every interview, but it's true because this has been all I've had so far. And my anxiety medication.
Well, well, I'm about to run upstairs in a minute and make some spaghetti for some. Did you have any actual questions you wanted me to answer? I actually did.
Well, why don't you let's do a lightning round. You ask me some questions and I will try to do them in sentences rather than mini series.
So how is Pirate Cat? Somebody asked me that.
Oh,
I run a group called the Comic Jam, by the way.
Okay.
And we get artists and writers together.
Hello.
And
my Comic Jam.
These people will do 1-page comics, which
cool.
you know about doing a short comic. It is all to like kind of build portfolio. So
it's good. Yeah, it's a good idea because people tend to forget to do comics when they want to get a job in comics. They do pinups and covers, and that's what they show all the time. And you got to show that you can tell a story in comics form because it's not as simple as it looks.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a lot of people out there, and you've got to. You're fighting a lot more artists and writers these days than when I got into this industry.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a big pool.
And there's 13-year-olds that are doing beautiful work out there that like I could never do. I want to destroy my equipment when I look at it. Usually it was like, oh my God, Gabriel, Garcia Lopez, Walt Simonson, these people who just knocked me on my ass, and then Becky Cloonan. But now there's this 12-year-old kid, and they're just drawing them. And when I was 12, I didn't draw much better than I did. I didn't draw. Yeah. It's terrifying to be exposed to so much talent.
My 10-year-old's starting to go on to YouTube and do like the tutorials and stuff.
Oh, nice.
And she'll show me her stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh, kid. But okay, so I had a friend.
Pirate Cat is doing good. Pirate Cat turned off the webcam a little earlier in this interview. She's going to be in my studio for a couple of weeks. We take her out for visits with the rest of the family. We have to acclimate the other cat to her. She came back from the vet with a good bill of health. She's no female leukemia, no feline leukemia. She's healthy. The eye is always going to be, she doesn't have that second eye use, but she's happy and healthy, and we're going to try to keep her. Thanks for asking. We love her.
That's awesome. Is this the first time you fostered an animal like that?
No, we've taken it. This is going to be our 6th cat in this household over time, and we had taken a bunch of cats from the backyard or the neighborhood to the vet. We've taken in strays. We've fostered. Friends of ours have taken in a bunch of our cats when there were more strays in this neighborhood. So it's been a while since we've taken in a new cat. But we weren't going to take her in permanently because it's just, it's a responsibility and it's hard. And I didn't. But she ran into the room. She ran into the house last Friday, 2 Fridays ago, and our kid, our 16-year-old, our teen, was like, "Let's foster her. Can we foster her?" I'm like, "Yeah, I wanted to keep her. I fell in love with the cat, and she's beautiful behaved." So, Pirate Cat. Hopefully, this is her port of call for the rest of her life.
Awesome.
If not, we would definitely find her a good home. So she's safe. She's going to be great.
So as an animal lover, Marco and Antonio actually asked, he is one of the presenters from the Comics Pals podcast. He wanted to know if it's ever tough for you to put the animals in Beast of Burden through like the really dark situations. Is it hard as an animal lover to kind of put them in such a scary...
It's hard to have bad things happen to characters you like who are human if you are doing a good job, I hope, and you care about your characters, which I think most people do. But with animals, it feels much worse because they seem so innocent. They're less complicated characters. I mean, the dogs are loyal, and the dogs and the cats are very, very cute. And the short answer is sure, of course. That the issue that we did with the Hazel's missing children was very, very tough to write. That came out of a fear of losing my child. Just, anxiety about being a father and having a small child in your life. The kind of flip side of that was the Dimphna story about her being a bad parent for her 2 children and their horrible life. And it's a combination of putting some of my own fears and my background into these kind of terrible situations for these adorable animals. I mean, this book was not planned. I don't think I ever would have planned a book that had horror stories where animals could get hurt. I also know that from a commercial point of view, it's not a great idea because there are a lot of people who will not touch the book or have one and done or put it down because there is animal harm and there's animal death and violence. A lot of that comes out of Watership Down and Plague Dogs by Richard Adams that I read when I was young. And I'm just it's a fantasy book, but at the same time, it's a horror book. And this is the way it was set up from the first story, that there was a ghost in the first story. It was kind of sad. I know what's going to happen to a couple of the animals in the book. And we had a meeting with the editor and Jill started busting out crying. Jill has cried on the pages several times.
Oh, wow.
From what I understand, Ben has not, but we haven't done anything too sad in our books yet, luckily. But we've had some really kind of weird, not children's comics stories. And there's one character that I know is not going to make it. And I actually busted out crying when I realized this was the way I was going to go. I was on Highland Boulevard waiting to make a left turn, and I just started leaking. And I feel terrible about it. And it was funny because Brian's then husband, Jill's husband, like she might, he goes, what did Evan tell her? What did they say? I mean, she's also an easy cry with these poor little baby characters. And because apparently she went up to the hotel room at the convention and was just really upset. And yeah, some of the characters are not going to make it at the end. Ace was supposed to die in the werewolf story eventually, but everybody talked me out of it.
Are you glad that they were able to talk you out of it, or is it?
I mean, at the point we didn't have a series still. These were just in the anthology books. I mean, it all came from one story. So these things, this kind of all happened piecemeal. You know, we did an 8-page story, and it was supposed to be that was it. That was the one story. So we're figuring it out as we went. And if Ace died, we wouldn't have had like we wouldn't have had our fighter character. If in a D&D party, he's our fighter. And him becoming a kind of semi-werewolf kind of worked out really well because our characters don't really have powers. And which is why, unfortunately, some of them are going to get killed. They shouldn't be doing this, to be honest. But they're loyal, and they're helpful, and they're innocent, and they're trying to help. And unfortunately, some of them aren't going to make it. At least the cats have 9 lives.
Now, when you write these scripts for either Benjamin Dewey or Jill Thompson, have you had to change your writing style to fit the artist, or is it just...
No, the book is what it is in my head, and I worked with Sarah on the new one, but basically, this has to be. I'm sure this is the same for everyone, but anything you work on has a different voice. Again, I'm using that term, but it has a different feel. It has a different approach when you go up to it. But Blackwood is has a lot of the elements of Beast of Burden, but it's got a different attitude. It's got different characters who are not as loyal or innocent. It's a cynical horror comedy, whereas the Beast of Burden has no cynicism in it. These animals are their feelings are on their sleeve, for lack of a better way of putting it. They're not really super deceitful. They don't make pop culture jokes, things like that. If we write Supergirl, it's going to be different it's going to be adhering to what we think that character stands for. In the animated series, when we did the comics, Bill and Ted, I went back, we just did a new Bill and Ted book, Roger Langridge and I put my head back in that space. It's basically like wearing different outfits for different jobs or for different events. And when I'm doing Beast of Burden, it's Beast of Burden. I don't worry about the artists because I trust them.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be true to the characters. I mean, basically, if the artist doesn't want to do certain things or is uncomfortable with something, we're going to talk about it. But if Ben comes back and puts something in silhouette, if he puts a scene of gore into silhouette, which Jill would do a lot, I'm not going to complain. They tell the story, you know what I mean? They're the cinematographer, and they do the acting, and they set the atmosphere. They do a lot of heavy lifting. So I'm not going to, unless it's a plot point, we'll have a conference. I go, well, we really kind of need Dog 5 in there because he has dialogue, or we need to show something in the foreground because it's going to come up later. But otherwise, I write pretty detailed. I write very detailed scripts. I write full script, but I also tell my artists that they're free to break the page down, break the page up, lose a panel, gain a panel, whatever they want to do to make something work for them.
Yeah.
And if they don't like drawing cars, I try not to put cars in there. Jill is afraid of snakes. Jill has a phobia about snakes, so we never will have a snake in a comic that if Jill ever comes back to do an interior, we won't have a snake. Things like that. You don't want to be a jerk, you know what I mean? But I mean, if somebody says, I feel uncomfortable about writing this, I do not want to show this character doing this or what have you. Hey, by the way, here's Pirate Girl. But like the showing the pond, the last page of Lost, Jill called me up and said, how are we gonna do this comic without a last page? Because I'm not drawing it. And she was joking, but she didn't want to do it. But you know what I mean? You have to respect the person you're working with. You have to respect them that they want to have a fun time working on the pages also, even if they're working from a full script. And they want to have input and they want to do things a certain way. But I don't change the scripts.
Yeah.
People ask to do certain things. Also, people will say from the beginning, I'd sometimes if they have requests or questions, we work that out beforehand, generally. But I haven't worked with enough artists to do much tailoring for them, because a lot of the times when I'd write something, I knew who the artist was already, and we were working things out. Like the Thing miniseries at Marvel, I was brought in on that. I knew what was going on. But sometimes you get an artist, you have no idea who's going to draw it. We knew that Brett Blevins, who storyboarded on the Superman Adventures and a lot of the Warner Bros., we knew he was going to draw the Supergirl stuff that we did for DC. So, we knew we were in good hands. But generally, I just write the script and hope the art will, tell the story as best as possible. When it's your creator-owned book, you can obviously ask for things. It's your book. You own it. You're trying to tell your stories. But in general, I don't worry too much. The story is important. Go for it and then see what happens.
That's a good way to look at it.
Generally, I've worked with really good people. And I've worked with friends a lot of the time. I worked with Ben Dewey on the Marvel Snapshots. I knew what he was capable of. We knew what, and the thing is, so many artists are so good these days, okay? I mean, I would never make it. I would never get a chance to draw a superhero comic or work on something like that the way that I did get to do Fight Man and do a few little things here and there, because people are so talented right now. There's so much great technique. So as far as the picture, you're not going to get like Rob Liefeld. I'm not trying, but I'm just, you're not going to get something where you go, I don't know what I'm looking at. Hey, he can buy and sell me. You know what I mean? He is what he is. But as somebody who really doesn't like certain styles in the comics, you know that you're generally not, it's very hard right now to throw a dart into this talent pool and get somebody who can't draw a good-looking interior. Or people learn backgrounds. People are putting more backgrounds in their commissions than they used to put in comics in the 90s. I mean, people are there's incredibly talented people out there working in comics. Comics look fantastic. Not every style is for me, but the level of talent on display is amazing these days. Just amazing. So, I mean, they've never looked better. I wish people would make the superhero comics a little more. I miss foreshortening. I miss action that's kind of exciting. I miss people with their mouths open, more expressive. Everything looks like photo reference to me. Everything looks very tight. And storyboard, or like commercial storyboarding of the days of yore. I mean, the technique is beautiful. The drawing is there, but there's like everything. It's robotic.
Yeah.
It's almost like emulating the movies. Which, why do that? The movies are the movies. What we can do in comics is to take things to another level and do things movies can't necessarily. To have foreshortening, to have spectacle rather than just a beautiful light show from the colorist. We see beautiful light shows in all the MCU and DCU movies. That's my 2 cents. But, I like superheroes a little more colorful, a little more kind of like more like Lucha Libre than WWF, if that makes any sense. I like more craziness and wildness and imagination rather than lens flares in comic books and realistic costumes and things like that. That's just me. I'm old.
I hear you. Speaking of wildness, my dog is up there howling.
Okay. Is that all your questions?
Yeah. Okay. Where can we find you?
I don't want you to find me. Get the fuck away from me. What are you talking about? I'll knife you if you come near me. Where can you find me?
Evan Dorkin, he will knife.
No, I don't have a knife. I have a pirate cat. Where the hell am I? Well, I've got a Patreon. Stop. Which is kind of where I do most of my creative work right now. Cat, stop. Cat. I don't know what my Patreon's link is, but it's me, Evan Dorkin. Greatest name in comics, Dorkin. I'm on Instagram. Again, just like Evan Dorkin.
Patreon /Evan Dorkin.
Oh, okay. I'm on Instagram, which is where I show off a lot of my art. That's not Patreon stuff. The drawings that I sell, I do these little drawings that we do the lottery style. People put a claim in, and I roll D&D dice or generate a random number, and whoever has the winning claim buys it. And I mail it to them. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Patreon. We sell Milk and Cheese t-shirts and House of Fun stuff on TeePublic, TeePublic. I think we're at House of Fun at TeePublic. If you're an old-time Milk and Cheese person and you like the old gin shirts and things like that, I redrew them. We brought them back. They look really good. You can get them on any color. And I guess that's about it. I got some, Beast of Burden Occupied Territory is issue 3 is coming out in like 2 weeks.
Awesome.
Marvel Snapshots is getting a full collection this year. All of our DC animated stuff is getting collected in the kids editions, the Supergirl animated, Superman animated. The Dark Horse Book of Horrors getting reprinted in paperback. Yeah, it's been, Bill and Ted just came out in paperback from Dark Horse, the sequel to Bill and Ted Bogus Journey, and the prequel to the new movie that's out from Dark Horse. So yeah, still doing stuff.
Awesome.
Not dead yet.
I'm going to put links in the show notes.
Well, thanks a lot.
Hopefully we'll have this up by the week that issue number 3 goes out for Beast of Burden.
Yeah, just, that's cool. Drop me an email so I can plug it. And, people are used to me never shutting up. So
I hear you. Evan, thank you again
thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks for
coming on. It's been a dream talking to you. I've always loved your stuff. When I first saw you in Wizard magazine when I was a kid.
That's so funny that so many people found my work through Wizard, because people are like, "Why are you doing stuff for Wizard?" And I'm like, Wizard was a place. Wizard was weird. Wizard wouldn't write me up, but they would hire me. I did Milk and Cheese and Eltingville Comics for them. I did a board game for them.
I remember the board game. I had the board game.
I did their Christmas card one year. But they wouldn't actually interview me or anything like that. It was the funniest thing. It was a really weird relationship, but it was like the people who did the back of the magazine really were into me, into my stuff, and that was very, very cool. And I have scanned a number of the envelopes I got from kids who would write to Wizard and draw on the envelopes, and we got a lot of Milk and Cheese envelopes. They would send them to me.
That's wild.
Jim McLaughlin, who's with the Hero Initiative, he would send me all the envelopes, so I've scanned them all. And they would draw Bart Simpson and Milk and Cheese, and it was like the weirdest. It's so funny to hear that. Sorry, that really makes my day. It's such a weird. Even though I was against almost everything Wizard stood for with their price guide and all that crap. But,
that was great. A window. Like if it wasn't for Wizard, I would have never read Adrian Tamine or your stuff. Or
what was it? Was it Tom Palmer Jr. in the back, or was that Hero? I'm trying to remember.
Oh man!
Somebody in the back would write. Yeah, they'd have
an indie section. Yeah, it was.
They'd have a 1 or 2 page indie section, and they'd plug that stuff. But I would do something. I would do something for anybody who asked who wasn't a Nazi or Nazi adjacent. You know what I mean? Anything that wasn't this, unless it was a company that I absolutely hated the guy running it. I was grateful for any call I got, and not only was Wizard supportive of me in that weird way, they paid better than most of the comic companies. So it was a win-win. And we got. I still have people coming up to us at conventions, not in the last year, obviously, who got into our stuff through Disney Adventures because Kid Blastoff, and that's all they knew us from, really, or Wizard. And there are still people who think that I lived in Wisconsin because of The Onion running Milk and Cheese.
Oh wow!
You never know where people are going to find you or get into your work, and a percentage of those people, like you, are going to stick with the creator, which is, fantastic. It's just gratifying to hear that. That it grabbed you and you stuck around.
Evan, thank you so much, man. I've enjoyed it. And
say hi to the dog.
I certainly will.
And feel free, if I have anything coming out again, maybe in a year or so, you have my email. Feel free to ask me.
We'd love to have you on, for sure.
Maybe I'll even let you talk.
Man, it worked perfect, and it was great. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
All right, have a good one.
Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Spaghetti! And we're back.
That's right. We are back. Back in the saddle again. Well, I hope you guys really, really enjoyed that as much as we did making it for you. And if you like what you heard and you want to hear more, you got to go check out Spoilerverse.com, because at Spoilerverse.com, we have a plethora amazing directors and artists of all walks of life, and editors and writers, and oh my God, are you a lover of comic books like we are? Then
so
there's
many.
so many amazing people from the comic book world over at spoilerverse.com, and I highly implore you to go there and check it out.
Yeah, and while you're there, you can check out all the other podcasts on our network, like Bridges and Geekdoms and Funny Book Forensics and Haphazard Adventures and Nerds from the Crypt and so many more.
Misery
We put out
Point Radio.
episodes all the time. Go check all of them out. And check out all of the reviews and previews and articles we have going up every single day for you. Every day on spoilerverse.com for you to check out and to read and to love and to like and to comment. We have a store link. If you want to help support the site, you can do it two ways. One, go to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/spoilercountry, or go to our store link in the middle of the site there and get a t-shirt, a face mask, a hoodie, something, look fly as hell, and help support the site when you do that, because we get $1 or $2. And, maybe you want to talk to us. If you do, you can do it obviously on all the socials, but if you go to scpod.us/discord, you can join our public Discord server and come chat with us all day long.
I couldn't say it better myself, dude.
There you go.
You just mouthed out a ton of information at once, and really, I hope you guys enjoy what you're hearing, because we're working our butts off to bring it to you.
We are.
I guess there's only one left thing. Yeah, I'm gonna go with it. There's only one left thing left to do.
What's that?
In an oceans of podcasts,
We are Cthulhu.
as Cthulhu compels you to
Spaghetti. Open the mind.
and read more.
Spaghetti.
What's going on, everyone? Are you still looking for that perfect one-stop shop for all things pulp culture? That one place where you can hear hot takes about superheroes, Star Wars, video games, and more? Well, fear not. Bridging to Geekdoms is the place for you. A podcast that focuses on the current rumors, scoops, and controversies within the pulp culture world. Hosted exclusively on the Spoilerverse Network, you can find us on any one of your favorite podcatching apps, YouTube, and at spoilerverse.com. So don't miss out on the excitement. Find us and subscribe now.